Okay. Those peas that I planted on St. Patty's Day that people were saying, well, it seems too early. Well, they were in the garage. They can be in the ground. So I put them in the ground and told her that I soaked them overnight and then put them into a wet toweling, on wet toweling in a plastic bag to check how viable this seed is, because it's 2-year-old seed. And I had planted like 3 seeds per hole. Well, 3 days later, 3 days in the warmth and the wet, almost 100% of the seeds, the 3 that are by themselves, were the ones that floated, that supposedly the embryo is dead when a seed floats. Almost 100% germination on those. And so that means that as soon as it gets warm enough, they'll be cold enough outside. Just St. Patty's Day peas, they'll be fine. And they will come up when they're supposed to come up. There's the root was on most of them. The leaf is beginning to unfurl on this one. They're fun to play with, but it's too early to sow things indoors unless you've got a serious light set.
Gotta have really bright light,
and not just a light, but you've got to be able to have lights that you can raise. So our friend Burdette always had just tons of things started in, and she started in the deli takeaway packages, and had a number of fluorescent light fixtures. I think there were 6, so it was a solid ceiling of
light
that can be raised to be sitting just a couple of inches over the plants the whole time that they're growing. And as they get up taller, then the lights have to be stronger and lifted, because they have to stay in the light. So if you don't have serious light set up, wait until the middle of April or the 1st of May.
So I know it's hard. You can do it.
You want to set sturdy plants out. You don't want to set out things that have gotten spindly from being in low light and have infections in the stems because they were sitting too wet and underneath leaves that weren't well enough lit. If you've got a great light set up, good, but don't start them too early. Start them outside. They're growing fine outside. This is a March picture. The tulips are up because they're close to the foundation. But these violas germinated in the seed germinated in the fall, and they've been sitting there growing in the cracks, and they're blooming for you in March. It's fun to see the things that can grow. And so put your seed outside and watch for it to come up. This is Nigella, or Love in a Mist, carrot relative. It needs to be thinned out. These will all grow and they will all bloom with a little blue flower at the top. But if you want the plant to look wonderful and have lots of flowers, you have to thin them out, which can be kind of a pain.
You can leave a mass if you don't feel like it. Yeah. It'll still look good, but the individual plant,
they help. They help crowd out other things while they're there, though. Hellebores, I love seeing hellebores do this, and those are seedling hellebores all over around the edge.
All of these,
and pretty much all of those seedlings are going to be killed by the mother plant as her leaves extend.
Shade it out.
So this is the time of year, if you want to play around with seedlings, go grab a handful of hellebore seedlings and save them. Move them someplace else. Spread them out.
I don't know how true they come back.
Oh, well, you end up with a whole lot of mauve-colored ones and hanging down flowers. Yeah. They've been hybridizing hellebores for flowers that face up, and for yellows and whites and reds. And you're probably going to end up with a bunch of mutts, but they're still pretty plants. And taking the leaves off not only lets you see the seedlings, but it does make it look nicer. The leaves some of them have turned quite brown over the winter.
Yep. And
they can develop a botrytis infection that then eventually over time, we've shown you in some pictures in an article, if you looked up hellebore and botrytis, that can affect the flower eventually. But once we take those leaves away, we're looking at just flowers, and that's always a nicer look this time of year. We want to see color. The squill is moving around by seed, and the hellebore is moving around by seed.
There you go.
It's not too early to stake anything.
I mean, if you know something that's going to flop this year and it's coming up,
get something out there to support
now. Let it grow around it.
Yep.
Through it.
This is twisted twigs from Rosa Sharon that I stuck in the ground and twisted and tied together. There's little bits of string here and there where I tied the ends together, but that's over a peony. It's just beginning to come up. There's a little bit of red showing
right there.
Right there. Yeah. And these are branches from burning bush. Just jammed them in the ground and put the crotch ends together and let the peony come up through it. Because we are cutting things back now.
Yeah. You have lots of branches.
Yeah, here's Rose of Sharon. There's Rose of Sharon. The next spring, okay, I want to keep you small, so I'm going to take out a big branch. Probably every year I take out one big branch and let it start growing from the base, and then cut back the rest of them and let it grow back. Sonia does that with the burning bush that stays by the front corner of her house. She's going to take whole branches out. The tallest pieces come out, tallest, thickest old ones come out at the ground level, and then she shortens everything else. And then she can use those branches for something, for staking. I like things that don't flop over, like Cedar and Joy. Yeah. Okay, so we're just about.
All right. Yeah, we have just a couple of questions. Judith is curious about what time or when can herbs be started, inside with light or outside in the sun? Could it, or sorry, I read that wrong. Which herbs can be started inside with light or outside in sun now?
Inside with light, you can start some of the perennial herbs that take longer to germinate. If you're going to grow rosemary or you're going to grow oregano, those are going to take a little longer to germinate than some of the annual herbs like cilantro and, well, that's a biennial, but things that we grow regularly. Basil, you can start those inside with lights. Outside, you're only pretty much going to grow the perennial, going to put the perennial herbs outside. Well, no, you can put cilantro and parsley. They'll start outside.
Yeah.
My sorrel should do fine.
Oh
outside,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's a nice, and sorrel will be with you forever because it's a nice perennial too.
One of our dogs has been trying to dig it out for years now because she likes that spot under the deck and finds a nice cool spot, and it is on an island of soil around her hole, and it's still going.
And there are a lot of herbs that are not the traditional culinary herbs like cosmere and angelica. There are a lot of herbs that you can grow, but that's because a lot of plants are herbs, are useful plants in one way or another, but not necessarily eating herbs. I had a herb garden when Steve was home taking care of the kids when they were real little, and Steve would go outside and pluck a plant, smell it. If it smelled good, he'd put it in the food. He grew with some herbs that I'm not sure we should have been eating.
Yeah, you never know.
Speaking of herbs, Diane says my rosemary plant still has some green on it from last year. Will it come back, or should I pull it out and replant? So this is an outdoor rosemary.
It may come back. Rosemary will in a sheltered place, and if it got through that December cold, it really was not that cold the rest of the winter, and so it might have made it through.
Either that or the storm might.
It might have green on it, but make sure you check the base of the stem that the stem didn't explode at the bottom like we showed you with the cambium broken open in that one shrub.
Yeah. And Mark is curious, and I was going to say maybe take a cutting of that rosemary where it's still alive. If it managed the year, maybe that's a rosemary, that particular plant could be worth hanging on to.
Yep.
Mark is curious if it's time to take off the burlap from the arborvitae.
I'd be taking it off. I've uncovered the hemlock. These days when it starts getting warm, 50 degrees, and you keep it close in there with the air heating up and moisture and not moving around, that's not a great combination. So I uncovered our brand new hemlock that I put in and covered up for the first winter. So I would take them off.
I was going to say, and speaking of, is it time? This will probably be a refrain for the next month and a bit. But Pat saying that she read that May 2nd is expected to be the last day of frost in Southeast Michigan. But then she also does clarify she waits until the soil is at least 64 degrees before planting the tenders. Can we give a quick hold fire? Don't trust the weather report. Other ways to determine when you're ready to plant, and we will return to this over the spring. But good to say.
We will definitely return to this, and yes, early May is supposedly the last good chance of frost. It used to be May 10th or May 15th, and it's moved up to early May.
Weeks now.
But it doesn't mean that there can't be a frost, and it doesn't mean that the soil is warm yet. We watch for the germination of the portulaca weeds and the crabgrass. When they germinate, we know it's warm enough for the really warm, tender plants.